right, so it's time for step 2 of the foundations of fractions. We're going to go over a few basics before we actually move into making sure that you have those foundations that you read at the top of the website. Our basics are made up of 4 parts. So the first out of the 4, you need to be able to give examples of numbers found in between whole numbers. The second of the 4 is you need to be able to explain what a fraction is. The third out of the 4, you need to be able to give real-world examples of when people actually use fractions. And then lastly, that 4th component is why is it important to include the unit when using numbers? So jumping right in, I have a number line for you. And on the number line, I've included 3 whole numbers. I've included the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3. And we're going to be talking about pizza today, because who doesn't love pizza, right? In our example, we're going to have 2 whole pizzas. So if you were to go to a party and there were 2 whole pizzas to start, you would see, like, well, if we were counting them, there's 1 pizza under the number 1, 2 pizzas under the number 2, but we know pizza doesn't last very long, right? It's not meant to stay whole. It's meant to be eaten. And so as we eat pizza, we begin to have less and less. And so let's say we ate some of our pizza. We still have 1 whole, and then we have some more. So on the number line, if we wanted to find a number that matched our picture, we know that it's not 1 because we have more than 1, and it's not 2 because we have less than 2. So somewhere in between 1 and 2 is our number. And so our number is 1 1/2. We have 1 1/2 pizzas currently, but we keep eating, right? I'm going to move the number line over. And we're going to kind of break down some of the numbers that can be found in between whole numbers. Now, keep in mind, there are many numbers in between each whole number. In fact, there's an infinite amount of numbers. But we're just going to talk about a few of them. So we started with 2 pizzas. We ate some. We had 1 1/2. We're going to eat some more. Now we have 1 1/4, okay? So we have less than 1 1/2. We still have more than 1. And as we go through the party, we're down to 1 whole pizza, and then we're down to something less than a whole. I don't have a whole pizza anymore. People have eaten some of my last whole pizza. So I don't have 0 pizzas, but I don't have 1. So my fraction now is somewhere between 0 and 1, and it is 3/4. And this is going to continue. Then I'm going to have less pizza. I have 1/2. I'm going to have less pizza. I have 1/4. And so you can see my number line is starting to fill up. I don't have 0 pizzas, which is the first number on there. I have 1/4. Before that, I had 1/2. I had 3/4. We have the number 1. We have the number 1 1/4. 1 1/2. Well, what comes next? 1 3/4, then we have 2. So in between whole numbers, in between the 0, 1, and 2, there are numbers. They just aren't always listed on a number line, but there's definitely numbers in there. Which brings us to the second out of the 4 parts of this video. What is a fraction? So I have the number line that we've built together. And we're going to start with the information that we do know. At the bottom of the number line, I have our whole numbers. I have the 0, 1, and 2. And those are our whole numbers. So with the pizzas, those pizzas were whole. They weren't broken up. People hadn't eaten out of them yet. They were still whole. But we want to talk about the fractions, right? So if somebody were to ask you, hey, what's a fraction? You should be able to answer it. What are these numbers? How do we define them? Well, a fraction is a numerical quantity that is not a whole number. Okay, so these numbers are the numbers in between the whole numbers. So when we had the pictures of these pizzas, none of them are whole. They're broken apart. There's pieces missing. These are fractions of pizzas. Real world examples. All right, so why do we need to know fractions? I mean, there are times when I've been in school and I think, why do I need to know this? Is this like really going to apply to my life, right? I mean, I think we've all thought that sometimes. Well, fractions you do need to know, because in case like you are, I don't know, a frog grilling out frogs don't use fractions. I'm sorry. I don't actually know how that got in there. Yeah. Frogs don't use fractions, especially like plastic frogs. Oh, okay. But these girls who are baking, okay, glad we got a real picture in there. These girls would use fractions in recipes. Recipes have fractions in them all the time. Anytime you're cooking or baking, you will see fractions. Carpenters, woodworkers, people who use tools use fractions. Musicians, in music class, when you talk about beats and you're counting beats and counting notes, whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, you're using fractions. Engineers create things, real world objects for us as people to use in our everyday lives, and they definitely use fractions when they're creating. To be quite honest, everybody uses fractions. Fractions are just as important to know as whole numbers. And so it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, you can't avoid fractions. They are everywhere. And so it is important that you take the time to learn fractions and understand them, which is why we're doing the basics, and then we're going to be building your foundations before you start 5th grade math. Now, the 4th part of this basic video is including the unit when using numbers. Now, perhaps you might read this and go, I have no idea what this means or where this is going. Don't worry. Go back to our pizza party. Let's say you come home from the party and mom or dad or whoever's home says, hey, how much pizza did you have? And your response is 1. 1 what? 1 is not an okay answer. What did you have? What is your unit? What are you talking about? Now, I know we're talking about pizza, but are you saying you had 1 whole pizza? Because my word, if I had 1 whole pizza, I'd probably have a stomachache. Maybe not you. We're all different. We're all different people. I know that. But maybe you had 1/4 of a pizza. Okay? And that's important. So the unit in this statement is the 4th of pizza. I had 1/4 of pizza. The unit, and the last one was the whole pizza. I had 1 whole pizza. So even though both pictures are talking about pizza, one is talking about whole pizzas, and the other one's talking about pieces of pizza, 1/4. And they're very different. The number 1, you can't just say 1 because it doesn't apply. Because this 1 whole, is way bigger, much different than this one, which is 1/4 of a pizza. And maybe you had 1 slice of pizza. Maybe that slice was a 1/4. Maybe that slice was an entire half. Maybe that slice was an 1/8 of pizza. Maybe you had an entire truck of pizza. That's crazy. Don't eat a truck of pizza, especially from that truck. That truck looks dirty. Let's recap. Okay, the basics. So, what you should have gotten from this video are the 4 points. If you did not get all 4 of these points, please go back, watch the video again, slow it down. Make sure you understand these 4 basic points before you move forward into step 3. So, you need to be able to give examples of numbers found in between whole numbers. I gave you some examples. Maybe you can think of some more. You have to be able to explain what a fraction is. Can you do it in your own words? What is a fraction? Think about it. How would you explain that to maybe a 3rd grader in the hallway, or if you have a younger sibling? Can you give real-world examples of when people use fractions? I gave you some examples. Maybe you can think of some other examples. And then lastly, why is it important to include the unit when using numbers? Those units are important. You don't want your parents to think you ate an entire pizza truck worth of pizza, right? So what are you talking about? Give those numbers some meaning. Those are your basics. If you feel good about them, then feel free to move on to the next video. If not, no big deal. Watch the video again. Take care of yourself first before you move on, because this is all about you.